Welcome to Life Rhythms, Tarot, Food, and Spirit. We are back in Brooklyn, and in the kitchen today, we are continuing on our squash journey, which if you've watched any of this, or certainly if you watched any of the Real Deal Kitchen, I talk squash a lot. So today we are going to be caramelizing some red curry squash, and we will caramelize it, beautiful, gorgeous orange color, lots of vitamin A power. We'll be caramelizing that, caramelizing some shallots that happens in some butter that we put in the pan just till it gets nicely browned on each side. The aim is not to cook it at that point. Then we place everything back in a nice wide pan, like a braising pan, and pour over that a mixture of white miso, and I love South River Miso brand, but certainly any more small producer miso I would recommend. And I prefer white miso. It's just a sweeter, just creamier texture and consistency and flavor in the mouth. And some shoyu. And shoyu is unpasteurized soy sauce. So again, this has a very rich flavor. It's definitely more expensive than regular soy sauce. Tamari would be the next step up, and then you would have your shoyu. But as with all things, as they become a little bit more artisanal, if you will, you don't need as much of it to get the impact. So we make a mixture of the miso and the shoyu, both of which are very salty, so there's no salt added to this dish. And then it's about a quarter cup of the miso to about a tablespoon or so of the shoyu, some chili peppers that get crushed up in there, and then we add about 2 cups of water. So we have about 2 cups of liquid, and if you wanted, you could have, I could have added some kombu to the liquid to add a little bit more mineral to the dish. I didn't do that this time. Once the shallot and the squash is caramelized, all goes in the braising pan. Pour the shoyu miso mixture over it, cover, and it will all braise. We've cut the squash into about 1-inch wedges. That will probably take about 30 or so minutes. Check it. I made it about 3 weeks ago for the moon gathering that we had here, the last new moon, and the squash itself, even though this is the season, it was from this harvest, really took some time to braise. So it took a lot longer to cook. So with squash, they have their own temperament. And that day, when we did it that time, we used one of the Blue Hubbard squash. So it was just a little bit more dense, which is how I prefer my squash anyway. And so we had to check it. It took longer than expected. This red curry, I don't know, we'll see. But again, we cut it into small wedges, probably about 30 or so minutes for that. What we also have here, so we have the red curry that's going on for that. I just showed you another beautiful Blue Hubbard. I just love to roast these and have them on hand to have for lunch, or really a simple dinner with some butter on it and maybe some greens along with that. Maybe not, depending on how I might be feeling that day with the medicines that I'm on. And then here we have a beautiful, look at how beautiful this is. I think maybe that's why I've hesitated cooking it. We've had this for a while. A white acorn, which actually, as my dad pointed out, is starting to yellow. We're kind of curing it here in the apartment. It's perfectly fine inside. I'm not worried about it. But this gorgeous white acorn squash, now aging a bit, yellowing. I wonder if perhaps the vitamin A content would be increasing as it's concentrating here. just a thought. Also on our squash journey, we made some beautiful squash tea bread, a tea loaf. This is so delicious. And I will post the recipe below for this. It's essentially a banana bread recipe that we had made last winter. And it's much more delicious with the squash. We roasted the red curry squash, scooped out about 2 cups of it, and then put it all together. I will post the recipe below for that. So we've got the squash bread. We're braising some red curry squash. I don't know what will happen with these 2 beauties, but they'll get used sometime in the next couple of weeks. And we are roasting a beautiful chicken. So what is happening with the chicken? Do we have any of the spice mixture left, or is it all? No, it's all on the, of course not. Made just enough, I think.
I didn't ask.
No, it's okay. That's perfectly fine. All right, yeah. So we have this gorgeous free-range chicken that we have put oregano, cumin seed, and Aleppo pepper all ground together. So it was cumin seed, so I crushed that first, and then, let's see, I'm gonna place this right here. Then added the oregano. It was dried oregano, beautiful Mexican dried oregano, and then some Aleppo pepper. This is about a 3.5-pound chicken. It's about a tablespoon or so of cumin seed, about a tablespoon and a half again of oregano, and probably a generous teaspoon of Aleppo pepper, about 2 teaspoons of salt, all ground together, rubbed on the chicken. And then we have lemon wedges, shallots, garlic, crushed garlic, and dates. So the dates are just gonna give it this little sweet concentration that I love. Originally, last night I was thinking, oh, maybe we'll take the chicken apart and braise it in kind of a Moroccan style braise with dates and lemons and more ginger, paprika, cumin, coriander, go that route. But since we're already braising the squash and the caramelization of that, and then you would have to brown the chicken, you know, it's extra work. So, you know, even though I love being in the kitchen, and even though I'm not in the kitchen myself, I want to be mindful. Even if I were doing it myself, I'm making the choice that let's do one method for the squash and make it simpler and simply roast the chicken. So just put those dates in there to get a hint of what I was thinking about last night. Perfectly fine route to go. And that is what we have going on at the moment. So the squash bread was baked this morning, braising the squash, roasting the chicken, do something, probably just a light salad to go along with the chicken tonight. And then we have food for a few days here. Carcass of the chicken, I'll probably talk about that again sometime next week when we make a stock with what is left, and then some chicken soup. So as I've spoken of before, you know, really thinking about how you're using everything, how you're using the whole thing, so you are maximizing your how your food goes, how your money is spent with your food, and then, you know, perhaps it becomes more sensible then for you to understand why you would buy higher quality products, rather than just thinking, oh, I'm just roasting this chicken, I'm only getting the roasted chicken out of it, I don't want to spend that extra dollars per pound for something that's had a healthier life until it reached you. So just things to consider when you're thinking about buying your food. And this is, I think, it for today. We're gonna chill out after this. What? Do we have something after this?
The flame on this?
Yeah, let's put a flame. So we're gonna start caramelizing the squash, and there will be an October roundup of what's been going on in the other realms, Tarot and Spirit, in the next day or so, and I look forward to checking in with you guys then about that. Until then, post comments or questions below. I'm happy to answer any questions around what we've been making. Recipes, I'll post the squash bread recipe, and we'll move forward from there. To be continued at Life Rhythms. Until we meet again, be well.